I'm Sonia Bedford. I'm Vice Chair of Green Wedmore, and I'm also a renewable energy solicitor. And I moved to Wedmore a couple of years ago and noticed and saw and had been aware of the fact that there was a really thriving green group and community in Wedmore. So I joined the group on the basis that there was still an awful lot I thought I could possibly help with. Wedmore, up to date, has got a community-owned solar farm. It's got we do recycling days, we do repair cafes, we have a community orchard and a community woodland. So there's an awful lot that's been done. But really what the village wanted to do was take things to the next level. So what we're doing today here at the church is launching a new project called Zero Carbon Wedmore. Zero Carbon Wedmore is a really, really ambitious project to take the whole village to net zero carbon over the next 20 years. So we've got a lot to do, but we're starting from a really good point. And what we wanted today to be all about, in the launch of Zero Carbon Wedmore, about a celebration of what the village has done so far and how it's really embraced the need to combat climate change and its large use of fossil fuels. So it's really exciting. It's about everything that is around us and that we've done and what we can do in the future. We're basing a lot of what we're doing on the research done by the Centre for Alternative Technology, and we've got Paul Allen, who is the lead of the Zero Carbon Britain project, coming here today to give us a presentation and talk around the project and the research that the Centre for Alternative Technology have been doing for the last 40 years. So we're basing our progress on something which is highly scientific and been researched, and which shows that we can, as a village, we can achieve net zero carbon because we can do it with everything that we have around us today. So we've got really big plans for the village. We've got, we want to start a community wind farm. We would like to put, the next thing that we're doing immediately is putting solar on the village hall and hopefully all of our public buildings. We're also going to put battery storage in the village hall. This will be a new thing for the village. We're going to put a Powerwall battery on the village hall to work with the solar panels, because the village hall, like a lot of the public buildings in this community, is used really, really well, but it's used a lot at night time. So one of the things we can do is not just use renewable energy to gain a feed-in tariff or a return, but actually really use it to reduce energy bills by putting it into that battery and making the village hall even more successful and sustainable than it already is by reducing their massive energy bills that they have every year. And we will be doing projects around 4 or 5 key themes within the village. So those themes are food, transport, energy, well-being and housing. So that's quite a big task, but if you split them all down, then we can manage them, hopefully. So for the food topic, for example, we're really lucky in the village that we have local producers, we have local shops and greengrocers and the local butchers. So we will be educating people about where that food comes from, about how they can shop locally. They don't need to get in their cars and drive out to the supermarkets. They can get all that they need, hopefully, within the village. And if there's things that we find aren't in the village, then hopefully we can start finding local producers to bring those in. So we'll be doing a food trail, getting people out and about, walking around, looking at not just the shops and the cafes, but where the food is actually grown and produced. And some amazing things that people might not know already in the village, like the fact that there is a aquaponics farm just outside on the edge that produces fish and beautiful vegetables through a system which is entirely sustainable. So we'll be showing people how this can be done locally and how they can even do that in their own gardens if they chose to do so. For things like energy, it's a really big thing to tackle in a village which is very old, steeped in history, and has a lot of houses which are not very energy efficient. So we'll be showing people through workshops how they can start saving energy first of all, because we need to save energy before we can build on that, and how they can insulate their homes, how they can change, simple things of changing a few light bulbs is going to save an awful lot of an energy bill. And a lot of fossil fuel use. And then we'll move all the way through the spectrum, as I said, up to building some more big renewables, hopefully, having started here with the solar farm and solar on the school as well. So lots of things to tackle with energy. Transport, again, a really difficult thing for a rural community, but we have electric charging points already in the village. So the next step on from that would be to get those electric charging points using green energy, because we want to be drawing on that, and then perhaps looking at a car sharing club to charge an electric vehicle through those electric charging points. We've got a community bus already in the village that runs most days, so that helps, but people probably aren't aware as much of the times and when that goes. So it's just about making people aware of the alternatives from just getting in their car and driving. We're not trying to tell everyone that they need to walk everywhere, but we're trying to make it a little bit easier to make those steps for people. On the housing side, as I said, we're also looking at, as well as existing houses, we'll be looking at new housing and seeing if we can potentially get all new houses to be built on a zero carbon model. Not an easy thing to do, again, in a rural community, but we will try. And on well-being, I think we have lots of things in the village which assist in a journey to zero carbon. The community woodland is a great place to go, a great place to be outside and to help. But you can just walk your dog down there and be outside in a publicly owned space, which is lovely and tranquil, but is also growing and hopefully producing things for the next generations. And we find by making small differences to their lives, people generally feel a bit better. And it's all about our community, and it's all about the fact that although Wedmore might have been an island once, we don't want it to be an island again, and we'd like to leave this in a much better place for our future generations.
My name's Steve Muse, and I'm born and bred Wedmore. Managed to move back to the village about 15 years ago, and love the place. And I did a lot of travelling in my youth, and the two things it taught me when I was travelling around the world was what the scale of the challenges we face are, but also how fragile our planet is. So when I settled back down here in Wedmore again, I was keen to do what I could to make this difference. But the main thing we do in Green Wedmore, so we've been going for 12 years now, we don't preach. We don't try to force anything on anybody. We just get on with stuff. We take action, and we just try to make that difference. If everyone comes along with us, then great. If only half the village comes along with us, then great. We just crack on and do projects and do what we can. And step by step, we feel that it's helping to make that difference. So today is the big launch of our Zero Carbon Wedmore project. So this is a big one. It's what we've been leading up to in many ways. So it's very exciting. We're going to try and get to zero carbon by 2045 and take us on that next step of the journey, really.
Do you think out of your journey you're sort of creating a template that other towns could adapt, other villages?
Yeah, hopefully. We've always been very conscious not to be too prescriptive. So we have very short meetings, and we just pick things that we can handle and we can cope with and that we can do quickly and just get on with it. So we don't like to talk. And just keep everything fun as well. That's really important. It's just, we don't make things rigid or boring or anything like that. There's always plenty of cake at any event, and keep everything free and accessible.
And are the local schools engaged?
Yeah, right from the start, we've managed to get some PV on the first school up the road. So back in about 2006, 2007, we had PV put on there. So they've got a good solar setup on there. And the kids are great, and hopefully we're going to work with more schools in the future as well to help them lower their carbon footprint. Yeah, and that's always been key as well, is getting some of the children involved.
And from your, are there any sort of highlights to date from when you started this to arriving to the day of the launch of Zero Carbon Wedmore?
Wow, there's been lots of highlights really. We've been very lucky, and we've had a great team producing what we've managed to do. I think one of the best things we've managed to be behind is our community solar farm. So we've got a 1 megawatt solar farm, or solar paddocks as we like to call it. It's a little more friendly, just up the road about 400 yards from here. And that was challenging. Producing something that big was a big step forward, but we did it. And that's been churning out renewable energy, day by day for the last 4 years, and that's been fantastic. So that was a big success story. And we've offset something like 5,000 tonnes of CO2 now since that was built. So again, that always, if you have a gloomy day, you look on the stats on our website and think, oh yeah, okay, we still produce some good renewable energy there.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell else that you'd like to share with our audience about greening your local community?
Don't be afraid to just crack on and have a go. You know, don't worry if you're just doing it on your own to start with. People will come and they will gather around and they will help. So just go for it and look to other communities for help. You know, we're always happy, more than happy. We've got lots of connections with other groups all around Somerset. And we're always keen to help people when we can and advise and just not have to reinvent the wheel. So yeah, just start small, take action.
Anyone wanted to find any information about your group, how would they find out about it?
The best place is probably our trusty old website, which is wedmoregreengroup.co.uk. And if you tap in Green Wedmore into Facebook, you'll find us as well, and at Green Wedmore for our Twitter account. So all sorts of ways of getting in touch with us. And yeah, don't be shy. Just join us.
I'm from the Centre for Alternative Technology, and for the past 10 years
pleasure.
we've been modelling what it would be like to decarbonise
Is that
Britain,
all right?
to remove our greenhouse
Harmony
gas
just
emissions
captured
at
your
the rates demanded by the science, not just what's politically nice to do a bit of this here and there, to actually look at what we need to do as a long industrialised country that's been burning fossil fuels for 150 years. So rather than thinking 80% by 2050, which is nowhere near enough to meet the Paris Agreement, let's think about getting to zero within a couple of decades. What would that be like? Is it achievable? How would we be living? What would a typical Saturday afternoon be like in such a zero carbon world? So we've been modelling that in greater and greater detail over the past 10 years, coming up with visions, coming up with models, hour by hour data, 87,000 hours of data looking at supply and demand to show we can keep the lights on. And the conclusion we've come to is that we have all the technologies to do this. We're not waiting for another eco widget to be developed to do it. We have all we need. The barriers are actually cultural and political. Well, we realised probably about 2 years ago that simply doing more and more models, how many wind turbines, how many solar panels, wouldn't in itself bring about the change we need. So we went off in a completely different direction. We started to look at what are the barriers and how do we overcome them. Looking at the carbon lock-in, how institutionally, how we deliver housing and transport has co-evolved with fossil fuels for over 100 years. So that sets all sorts of difficult lock-in barriers that we have to change. But we're also interested in how we overcome those barriers, and we found that grassroots, on the ground, individual, local projects are innovative enough and flexible enough and are actually building new relationships with transport, with food, with energy, with warm housing. And so we investigating the real life projects, finding out what works where and why. So we're here in Wedmore to sort of support the grassroots actives on the ground, but also intrigued to find out what their motivations are, how they're overcoming the barriers, and pulling all that together for a new report called Ambition on Zero that we're planning to have ready for the end of the year to help other areas cross-fertilise, sort of like picking the learning and making it available to everybody else. We're here to support their work as much as we need their support for our work. So we run Zero Carbon Britain training courses every 6 months at CAF. The next one's in the beginning of May. We're looking at the first day is looking at the model for Britain, how many wind turbines, how many solar panels, etc. The second day looks at how we overcome the barriers and make it happen. And then the third day is an experiential day where we start thinking about the tools we'd be using. We're thinking about what we could be doing that would be delivering more happiness and more well-being in a zero carbon future and experiencing some of those things ourselves. And that coincidentally leads into Machynlleth Comedy Festival, which is a fabulous, sort of like Edinburgh Fringe takes over Machynlleth, but we're actually trying to get some of the comedians through the short course as well, because they might give us an interesting take on it. So we do that, we do this training, but we can also do it locally if people book us to come and do. I just did Bristol last night with the launch of Zero West. So we're out and about quite a lot, sharing what we've got as practical tools to help increase ambition and overcome barriers locally.
Thank you so much for the work that you're doing, because it really is important, and I'm so hoping that it gets so adopted across the country.
Well, it is being adopted across the country. We're finding more and more places just Froome have just been in touch. They've got lots of stuff happening on the ground, but they know they need to accelerate and get more stuff happening. That was the same with Zero West, Zero Carbon Yorkshire, Zero Carbon Liverpool. There's new leadership emerging all over the country at regional city level, where activists, councillors, MPs, companies are all, we know we need to do more, let's come together and do more together. And in that we find a sense of collective purpose and fulfilment that you cannot get from simply just consumer lifestyles. It's something a lot of people have been craving for quite a while. And the challenge is there and the race is on.